election. And we are the largest APPG in this parliament, and it's got majority Labour MP membership. We also saw that in 2024 that a large vote share was for smaller parties who all back PR. So we know that public is increasingly supportive of changing the system. And something really surprising has been happening is the amount of media coverage, which is saying that our unstable system is not fit for purpose. So we think now is the time to really take action, and which is why, and those of you who have been with us for a while will know we do these things, we're holding a weekend of action across the country to mark the 2024 election, because we really want to reach the public with the message through press, through social media, in-person events and activisms, and 2,000 of you have already signed up to take part. These events are happening across the country. We've got two rallies, one in London and one in Manchester, which you'll hear more about later. We've got park runs, kite flying, picnics, flash street stalls. I mean, there's so much going on, but my colleague Molly's going to pop in a map so you can see what sort of activities are going on in your area. And if you don't see something, now's the time to get involved. You can sort out a picnic for your community too. We'll also be releasing a template letter so that you can write to editors in your local communities, because really, believe me, when I say that people read local press and they trust local newspapers more than they trust nationals. And we're also going to help you get involved in social media. So if you've not signed up already, please do sign up. And anyway, I know you didn't really come here to hear me talk, so I'm going to move straight on to our star guest of the day. And it's a real pleasure to introduce Femi Oluwole, who's a political campaigner. You might have seen him on things like Politics Live, he's always on the telly. And he's also a huge champion of fair votes. He's also a Nottingham lad, which might not mean much to you, but when you're from Grantham, you love to see these Midlands represent. So without further ado, over to you, Femi.
Hi, everybody. There are two main messages that you need to get out to every single person that you know. One is, first and foremost, that the UK is not a democracy, and two, that you are not alone and your needs and your wishes are shared by the majority of people. Because a lot of politics wants to make you feel like you are alone, like you don't matter, that your voice isn't relevant, that the majority, the will of the people is against you. But the majority will has been ignored for a very long time. If you look at every single election since World War II, there have only been three elections where the majority of votes have gone to parties to the right, well, the Conservatives and parties to the right. The majority of votes have gone to parties to the left of those. That's where the balance of the British will has been, and yet the Tories were in power for about two-thirds of that time. And if you look at every single election that we've had, it's always a party with a minority of the vote that gets majority control in Parliament, which means the majority of votes don't count. Effectively, they don't count. Because if you have a election where the majority of votes go to parties that don't get the majority, and because a party with a minority has a majority, then the remainder of the votes, the majority, like for example with this election, Labour got 34% of the vote, but they got 62% of the seats in Parliament. So the remaining 66% of the votes, what have they done? What are they doing right now in Parliament? Because Labour can just choose to pass any law they like without having to even consult the other parties, you know, the ones the majority voted for. And any system where the majority of votes don't actually affect the outcome, you can't call that a democracy with a straight face. So I want you to make sure you're having that conversation with every single person you know who isn't online, especially, and bring up the argument. Say, well, the UK isn't a democracy, and they'll say, yes, of course it is. Of course it is. And we're a grand tradition of democracy. They'll basically say we invented democracy. But then you'll say, well, do the majority of British votes have effect on policy making? And you'll explain to them, no. And that'll get them started. Because then they'll say, well, hang on, how have we allowed this to happen? How have we allowed ourselves to be called a democracy if the majority of British votes don't count? And then this is where you bring it to the fact that they're not alone. Because if you look at so many of the big issues that we've faced in recent years, especially given the cost of living crisis, the majority of people would want to do things that would significantly address the cost of living crisis. If you look at all the polling, it shows the majority of people want to tax the rich to help people out of poverty. That's where the majority of the British people are. But we keep getting governments that do the exact opposite. Whether it's the Tories, literally bragging like Rishi Sunak did about taking money from deprived urban areas to give to rich ones like Tunbridge Wells. Whether it's Liz Truss saying that it's a good thing to give more money back in tax breaks to richer people. Whether it's Keir Starmer in a government that has admitted that their new cuts to welfare support for people with disabilities is going to push 250,000 people into poverty. This is against what the majority of people want, and this is a symptom of the fact that the UK is not a democracy. So often you might feel a bit of unease or feel like you're being uncool to bring up topics like electoral reform because it doesn't sound sexy, but it is literally at the core of all the needs of the people you're talking about. Because you ask them, what's the most important thing to you? They'll say the cost of living crisis. Well, wouldn't you want to solve that with policies that would actually address that? Given that the UK is the fourth most financially unequal country in Europe, if you wanted policies to fix that, you need a system where the majority of people who want to tax the rich to feed the poor would actually have a fair say in our democracy. So the needs of the people that you're talking to are inherently linked to that. In 2019, in that election, the Tory votes, when you compare Tory votes to Green votes, and then when you compare the percentage of the number of seats it takes to get a seat in Parliament, sorry, the number of votes it takes to get a seat in Parliament, like the vote to seat share ratio, Tory votes were effectively worth 21 times more than Green votes. So if you're speaking to somebody young, somebody whose top priority is helping the climate, dealing with climate change, and you're saying, well, how do you solve the climate crisis if the votes of the Tories are worth 21 times more than the Green Party? Like, all of the things that the people you're talking to care about are inherently tied to this. And in terms of what this actually means for our democracy, I mean, the biggest thing is that right now politicians aren't scared of us. They're willing to do things that they know the public don't want because they're not scared of us. They have their safe seats. They know they can get into Parliament, get into Downing Street on barely 34% of the vote. In fact, Zia Youssef from the Reform Party literally tweeted just recently that he can get into government with 34% of the vote. They are bragging about their ability to manipulate our voting system to get into power. They're not scared of you, so they can do whatever they want, knowing they can alienate the vast majority of people and still get into power, still get absolute power over you. They're not scared of you. And the only way to make them scared of you is by making your votes count. And because if you have a system where in your constituency, let's say 30% vote Green, 30% vote Labour, and 40% vote Reform, then you're going to get a Reform MP. The majority of you, 60%, will have voted for more or less left-leaning parties, or at least further to the left than Reform, but you'll get the most right-wing option. And if that were to happen across the board in every single constituency, then you'd have 100% of MPs being Reform and no MPs being on the left, despite the 60% of people wanting left-wing policies. Again, the UK is not a democracy. And in terms of, what was I going to say? How we actually talk to each other, because as you've seen over the past, well, almost 10 years now, UK politics has been fundamentally broken. We've been a fundamentally divided society, and people treat each other as if they are a threat to their very existence. Now, in certain cases, if your party, for example, supports riots that lead to people with my skin tone being hunted, that is slightly more literal. But one of the reasons why politics is so adversarial, so angry, is because if you live in a town where, if you live in a system or a town or a system where only one point of view is going to actually end up having an influence. If you live in a constituency and you know that anybody from a different party, if they win, if they do well at all, it means that your views will not be heard at all in your town. And across the country, only one party gets to win because we have first past the post, which keeps giving a minority voted party majority control. That means that every person with a point of view that is different to yours is an existential threat to your ideology. The system is designed to make us hate each other. If we had a system, a proportional system, which is based on collaboration, which involves multiple parties working together because there is no single party represents the whole people, then our politics would be based on collaboration. It would be based on talking to each other. It would be based on understanding each other. So, like I said, if there is so much, if we get proportional system, this system could be so much better. Your views would actually be represented in Parliament. Your policies would be implemented. But that's going to take you having that conversation with absolutely everybody you know. Thank you. Emma, you're still muted.
I was pointing because the system means I can't unmute myself. Isn't that handy? Thank you, Femi. So there are a couple of things that you said which really actually rocked me to my core, and I'd not really thought about them in this way. I mean, number one, that the system is designed to make us hate each other. I mean, that really, whew, don't know about other people, but that really made me like shake. But one thing, if you don't mind, before other speakers, I can ask you a question, is like you say talk, talk to everyone, and I agree. But that conversation is quite difficult to kick off. And you talked a bit about like tapping into people's like things they like or are passionate about. But how would you start a conversation with someone in Hucknall, in our neck of the woods, about democracy? Put you on the spot there.
I'd say, well, how literally the most basic opener of any question is how are you? And they'll make a point about how things are going, and it'll have some tie to the cost of living crisis because that's the thing that everybody is facing. Or they'll say, well, look at the state of geopolitics, look at the state of what's happening in Israel and Iran, etc. And you can point to, well, it's horrendous that the government is doing things that the majority of people don't want, because the majority of people, I think by a ratio of almost 3 to 1, want us to stop selling weapons to Israel. And yet, Keir Starmer is about to prescribe a group that opposes the sale of weapons to Israel as a terrorist organization. So anything that you say about how are things going is going to lead to the question of, well, things would be so much better for you if we had policies that would make that better. How do you get those policies? A voting system where your voice is heard.
So just to check in that everyone heard the opener, how are you? And I think that's just a great way of starting lots of conversations. And one of the things that I've done, Femi, because I come from one of those seats in Grantham, which has never changed and my vote has never counted. So I actually ask people is, do you think your vote matters? And quite often I'll find people say, well, I never vote for the party that wins. And that's another great way of sort of opening these conversations. And I think so, because your point for me about like trying to get other people engaged is so important. That's how we build momentum. I just wondered, well, oh,
On,
go on.
on that point, yeah, that's another thing I wanted to say. That because everybody knows we live in this voting system that whereby you're often having to vote against a party rather than for a party because your main aim isn't voting for a party that you actually truly believe in, it's keeping out the party that you consider to be a much larger threat. Which means that everybody walks out of is disappointed in the election before they've even walked into the booth. Before you've even walked into the booth, you're disappointed with the result because you know that you won't be able to express your actual views. And that again, on top of the anger that I mentioned and the hatred, it just breeds a horrendous flavor of politics.
Indeed. And what we know is that the if you feel that way, you end up not voting. And all the academic research shows that if you don't vote, then you are more likely to have like fringe parties appeal to you because you
Mm,
make it a protest vote because you think, well, they're never going to win anyway. So then
mm.
all sorts of weird distortions happen through the system. Yeah. I just wondered if anyone else has got any questions for Femi because they were asked about you've got some really good you just gave a really good example about how to link to the cost of living crisis. And there was one thing, maybe you'll be able to help me answer this. Neil, right at the top, said that he would help writings with local paper. His local paper is quite thin these days. And I think we all know that even though local media is trusted, there isn't quite as much as there used to be. So are there any other sort of tips of trying to get into the media or other ways of thinking through how to get this really important personal message across?
So the my main theory of change has always been having that conversation about the UK is not a democracy with as many people as possible. Because ultimately, for me, the goal that I see is the shining, if we can get that, we win, is I want Keir Starmer to not be able to get through a single interview without somebody asking him, so, Mr. Starmer, why do you believe the majority of British votes shouldn't count? If we can get there, we win. And therefore getting that question onto those panel debates, onto those interviews will require the majority of the public to be aware most votes don't count. And under those circumstances, the UK cannot be a democracy. Which is why the more you can have that conversation um, in your pub, in your workplace, and even I know workplaces are dangerous, but if you simply say the fact that, well, most votes don't count, so blah blah blah, and they'll be like, well, but how? As you don't need to mention your political views, just say, well, look, every single election, the majority of votes go to parties that don't actually get any say in government, and you can have those conversations without even expressing a political view, so you can't get in trouble for that.
Thank you. So I've got a mind-blowing question for you, possibly not for you, but it is for me, from Paul, who said, I know we're like way far out from a general election, but do you think we could be taken out of the ECHR by a party with just a minority of votes under first past the post?
Yeah, I mean this is the double-edged sword. Um, yeah, with the reform getting in on 34% of the vote, which they can do, I mean, like because Labour just did it, they would take us out of the ECHR, and that's the reason why you need the ECHR because national parliaments uh, can't be trusted in the sense of the reason why the ECHR came about, the European Convention on Human Rights, is because it was a response to what happened in the Second World War on the basis that there should be external rules that limit what governments can do to people. And and even if a government is elected, that there might be flaws in the democracy that allow a government with a minority of the votes to take rights away from the majority of people, which is exactly what would happen under those circumstances.
Yeah, that's quite chilling. So, and thanks for explaining it so clearly to people like me who just find it mind-boggling. So one thing I was wondering if I could just ask you before I introduce our grassroots campaigners, and then we're going to have another round of Q&A, is why do you think that grassroots campaigning is the key to getting PR? And second question, if I might add to that, is how would you engage with an MP if you were thinking about it as in a local context?
So grassroots campaigning is essential because there's a reason why, for example, the Vote Leave campaign went extremely local. They went as local as they could. They targeted people by street because you have to start local. You have to start. People operate within their communities. You need to make everything that you want in terms of political change has to be a conversation that takes place down at the pub. You need to work at that local level, and it's going to start by hearing these messages from people that you trust, because often people need to hear things from multiple different directions before they take it as okay, that's something worth listening to. And if they're hearing it down the pub, if they're hearing it at work, if they're hearing it with their mates or at the family dinner table, then they're going to start to think, okay, this is something that we need to actually deal with. And in terms of what you do when you're talking to an MP. Um, you need to be hard line. Like I said, the problem we have here is that the politicians aren't scared of us. They think that they can they think they can, Labour politicians seem to think that they can get back into power while still supporting first past the post. We need to prove to them that that's not true. Because politics works based on politicians realizing that if they don't do X, Y, and Z, they won't get elected again. So we need to be hard line. If you're not supporting first past, if you're not supporting, if you're not supporting, if you're not supporting proportional representation, the system where all votes count equally, we will not vote for you. We will vote Green, we will vote Lib Dem, we will vote SNP, we will vote Plaid, we will vote for any party that is willing to give us a fair voting system, and even do it on the candidate by candidate basis. Say, we'll support Labour candidates who support PR, but if you're a Labour candidate that supports first past the post, no, because I think one of the things people forget is they think we're in the because often parallel to America, they think we're in the first time Biden got elected place
Mm.
where everybody pulls together and we think, all right, we got to stop this guy from taking over. No, we're in the second time. We're in the time where everybody pulled together once. Say, all right, we'll work together to get these guys out once in a generation. Get the Tories out. Now people are tired. Now people actually want to get something that actually means something, because the change that's been provided hasn't done it. And so if we don't actually take a hard line and push Keir Starmer and the Labour Party to give us a proportional system, then you're going to get a party like Reform in on 34% of the vote, and then we're off to the races.
Thank you. And once the two women who are going to tell us about activism have finished, there's a couple of questions about our cross-party approach, which I will take. But I think that, for some people, a big scary thing is Greens having total control. And the point you're really making is, on such a small percentage of the vote, anyone can have 100% control, and that's not good for any of us.
Yeah, I don't want I once wrote a potential great speech, my ideal speech that I want to hear from Keir Starmer, and the opening line was, "I don't want to be in charge of everything," because
Yeah,
no single party should be in charge of everything,
yeah,
because by definition you are shutting out everybody who doesn't believe the same things that you do. I don't want the Greens to have total control. I don't want Labour to have total control. I don't want Reform to have total control. Because that is not democracy. By definition, that is a failure of democracy. Unless you're telling me that everybody in the country is fully supportive of all the Greens' policies, then that's not democracy. Yeah.
for sure. Thank you. So at the moment, we're just going to give you 5-minute break whilst I introduce two fabulous activists who work in two different parts of our network. So hopefully Abbie is ready. Abbie is, oh, there she is. Hi, Abbie. Abbie is a leading light in our Manchester Make Roads Matter and is going to tell you all about the rally that she's organising. Over to you, Abbie. Yo, you need to be unmuted. And I can't help you do that, but someone else will in the team. I hope. There we are.
Hello, all good. Thank you so much, team. Brilliant. Hi, I'm Abbie. I'm based near Manchester. I was going to double check first by way of hands whether they're virtual thumbs up or hearts or physical waves. If you have your camera on, who is based up north here? Out of interest. Oh, brilliant. I'm seeing hands. Fantastic. Lovely to see you all. Some new faces as well. Brilliant. Now, if you follow that link that Molly or Sally posted earlier to the map, you might find that there is an event closer to you. Definitely check that out and see if there are other events that are sort of more practical for you to get to. But if you are keen and can get to Manchester City Centre on our vast train network, I'm delighted to invite you to the Rally for Real Democracy in St. Peter's Square, City Centre, on Saturday the 5th. I believe the team is posting in the chat a link to this event for you to sign up for. It is going to be about an hour and a half long, maybe an hour, and we're going to have some fun speakers, local councillors from different parties, as well as the Labour MP for Stockport, Patrick Hurley. There's going to be some musical acts, including a parody song, at least one. So join us, even if it's just to hear what the Backstreet Boys would sound like if they were singing about electoral reform. And there will hopefully be some sunshine. It is Manchester, so I can't guarantee that. And afterwards, we welcome you to join us for a coffee in a nearby cafe. I'm trying to find one in the vicinity of the square that will fit quite a few of us in. In general, it's going to be fun festival vibes, all are welcome. If the idea of standing up for an hour and a half sounds very physically demanding to you, please sign up anyway and get in touch, and we will be able to accommodate that in some way. I'm planning on bringing some of my garden chairs along for anybody who just needs to sit down partway through. And any other needs or disabilities that we can accommodate, let me know via that sign up link, and we've got a week to figure that out. I want to finish by echoing Sally's sentiments earlier of particularly welcoming the new names and the faces. I really hope you feel empowered to join in for more of our activities going forward, because for clarity, I'm a volunteer who first attended one of these events about 5 years ago, and I had no activist experience really, but I just kept showing up to stuff with enthusiasm and I learned new things. And now I've gathered with other volunteers across the north to put on this big rally in the centre, and we're super excited by it. And I say that because I want to stress how much just showing up for these kinds of activities can really help you to feel empowered and active in your democracy, like you're participating in a democracy, even when democracy itself is not currently structured to empower you that much, depending on your postcode. So yeah, I really look forward to seeing some of you there.
Thanks so much, Abbie. And I really wish I could come because it sounds like it's going to be a fantastic day and wish you the best of luck. I think the one thing you said there that really sort of struck a chord was this kind of like you're part of democracy. And I think if you leave today's call with one sort of like thought in your head is democracy isn't about voting. It's not just about that one day in the ballot box. It's about every day, all the actions we take and how we like hold our politicians to account. So we definitely need to do more on that. So thank you, Abbie.
To
And
quickly pick up on that on a tiny
yeah,
bit, I just
please.
wanted to just because you picked it up so well, where the rally is in St. Peter's Square, it's really easy to feel that vibe because it's the
Mm.
site of the Peterloo rally for votes that happened in 1819. It was a really big milestone, and as well as where the statue of Emmeline Pankhurst is. So you're very much like in the footsteps of giants who came before you, and you can be part of that history, the little stepping stones. And like you say, it's not all just about the voting.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for that addition, Abbie. So next, I'm going to hand over to Livvy, who is just at the heart and soul of our young Make Votes Matter movement, who is bravely tackling London and Sir Keir Starmer's constituency. Over to you, Livvy.
Amazing. I think I'm unmuted. Yeah.
You are, yes.
Great. I'm Livvy. Yeah, and I'm helping to organise the youth rally for PR that's happening in London, if that's more accessible to you than the Manchester one. It's happening the day after, so if you're really keen, you could come to both on the 6th of July, which is the Sunday. And as we've already heard articulated so brilliantly this evening, it's been almost a year since the most disproportionate general election in history. And trust in politicians is record low, and that's particularly high amongst young people, so 18 to 24-year-olds and over 60s. There was a huge percentage point difference in turnout. So that's why we're kind of leading the rally. It'll be at 1 p.m. in Argyle Square Garden, which is very accessible from King's Cross Station. And it's right in the heart of Keir Starmer's constituency, like Emma mentioned. That location is absolutely intentional. We're gathering where power is concentrated, but representation isn't, because himself, in the seat of the Prime Minister, he was elected by a minority of voters. And again, I'm sure like the Manchester one, we've got a great lineup of speakers from all different sections of activism. So from the democracy movement itself, but also from climate justice spaces and migrant rights campaigns, because as we've talked about, the fight is intersectional, and we know that if your vote doesn't count, then your voice isn't going to shape the policy. It is a youth-led rally, but it's absolutely for everybody. We just want to get as many people there marching, making noise, and showing Starmer himself that we're done with safe seats and tactical voting. So please spread the word. I think the links should be in the chat. If you can't come, spread the message. If you know anybody in the London area, yeah, it's Sunday the 6th of July at 1 p.m. Argyle Square Garden, so very near King's Cross. Thank you.
Thank you, Livvy. And yes, so if you've got any young people in your lives, do let them know that they'll be more than welcome. If we can now, we're going to have plenty of time to ask questions. There's a few I want to pick up on, but I don't know if it's possible. And we didn't ask Abbie and Livvy if they're happy with this, but maybe can we spotlight Abbie, Livvy, and Femi and me, and then we can answer any of the questions. Please, shove in as many questions as you like. If there's only two, we'll just have two. So there was a question very early on from Andrew, who, thank you very much, Andrew, for your contributions and for your question. And I'm sorry if I'm paraphrasing, but it was that, you admire us, thank you very much, for being all party. But what arguments do we have for people who've got very different politics from Femi's? And part of the joy of our movement is we do talk to people from across the country, from different political spheres. And I would say to you, number one, check out Richard Tice's speech when he made it on the debates that we had, a backbench, this is hard, backbench business debate on PR for general elections. And he talked about why PR mattered. And this might surprise some of you, but it was for exactly the same reasons as everyone else on this call. It's about fairness. Now, they might not talk about it in the same words, but it's about representation and people's votes counting. So some of the messages land really well, no matter what political background you come from. I think that the one thing that we have always struggled with, even though in the last Parliament we had a few more Conservatives, is Conservatives aren't naturally for PR. We think that's changing. We think it's particularly changing amongst the public, but our job is now to make some MPs realise that they need to listen to the real will of the people. And so many of us remember that, right? That phrase, it's the will of the people. You know, a government on 34% of the vote is not the will of the people. So we are going to keep on, and we work with an organisation called CARE, is the acronym, and it's Conservative, I'm going to get it wrong, Association Action for Electoral Reform. And there are people who are in the House of Lords at the moment who are more interested in thinking about electoral change. So those partners that we have on the right are as valid and valuable as those in the centre and the left. I'd also say, Andrew, if you can recommend a great speaker, please let us know, because we are desperate to platform and profile people from the right who want to talk about why fair votes matter. So that was like quite a long response. I've got a couple more questions, but I think that I do want to hear from other people as well. But someone asked about why we only talk about general election, not local election. Kathy, thank you for that question. And sort of like the reorganisation of local democracy, and like not your fears about that changing the form of government. And I think you're absolutely right. Sally, who's on our call from MVM, is a passionate defender of local activism and local campaigns. And we have been doing more around local elections. We've signed a joint letter with partners from ERS and Unlock to say there should be no first past the post for local elections. And we do think that this is an area that we will keep on talking about. But we know, and this is a warning to all of us, if we get a PR for local elections, mayoral elections, etc., there's a big risk that the government will go, there we are, giving you PR, let's not fiddle with the House of Commons, let's leave that how it is. So we've really got to think about that. I feel like Abbie's dying to come in on local elections. You had that face that said, I want to talk. Have I got that wrong? No? Okay, fine. So have we got, let's see if we've got some other questions. I don't know if you've seen anything in the chat, any of you that you thought Femi has. Femi, which is something you'd like to address. I think we can just unmute the four people on Spotlight. Sally, I think that'll help. Femi's still not quite unmuted yet.
Okay. I'm trying. I'm looking through because when you know how I keep saying about how in every single election apart from three since World War II, the majority of votes have gone to parties to the left of the Conservatives. I actually did the research for that myself, and there were a couple of like hilariously bad ones. Like for example, on Winston Churchill's term in 1951, the Conservatives got 48% of the vote, and Labour got 49% of the vote. So they actually fully stole the election.
Wow.
And there are a couple of ones where the Tories got, well, the parties on the right got more than the parties on the left, but Labour still won. I think there was one election where one or two elections where that happened. So yeah, the system does not help anybody, and because people know that their votes aren't counted fairly, if you live in a constituency where you know it's a safe seat, you know you can argue till the cows come home, but even no matter what you do, your party, the MP isn't going to change. People feel utterly frustrated that like they're just beating their heads against a brick wall, and therefore, again, it changes the way we talk to each other. So how I would talk to people on the other side of the aisle is by saying, look, I want to have a much more respectful and fair discussion with you about politics, but this is preventing us from doing that.
Fair enough. Good answer. There was a question. Well, it's more of a point here for Margaret, but I'd be really interested to hear Abbie and Livvy's perspective. So just getting you ready. Margaret was saying that she's been speaking to people and shocked about how many people aren't interested in politics and how they don't seem to realise how important it is to understand the impact on their lives. And I'm sure that's something you've both come across as your role of campaigners, and Livvy's really nodding. So Livvy, what do you think? What do you say to get them convinced that politics is for them?
Yeah, I mean, everything is political. It's really difficult when you're trying to fight against a politics that doesn't want people to engage in it, really. It wants to uphold the status quo. So just making those material connections to people's real life, real daily life struggles, like the cost of living, like if they're worried about the climate crisis, or even just the idea of their vote not counting, not having a voice, the unfairness and injustice of it. I'd really, yeah, everything is political. It just needs, we need to like be able to form those connections in people's minds, which can be a struggle at times when, people are struggling just to like live. But I think if we're in privileged positions to be able to care about this sort of thing, then it's our duty and responsibility to kind of pay that forward.
Absolutely. I'll come to Abbie and then to you, Femi, if that's all right.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I'm sure Livvy's had the same experience that the main pushback I get on street stalls is not from people who disagree with PR, very people sort of like actively oppose it, but from people who are so disillusioned with politics that they think there's no point in even trying. So you try and give them like these great like statistics and logical arguments, but they just think, oh, there's no point because the people in charge don't want it, because why would they give up the power of path that got them there? And I find that the only antidote to that disillusionment is not any of those logical arguments and statistics, but hope through history is what works for me. And what is very convenient for me is that one of my favorite spots for running outreach stalls in St. Peter's Square, where the rally will be, is that you're stood right next to the suffragette statue of Emmeline Pankhurst. So when people are dismissive and saying, oh, I agree with your cause, but it's pointless because the people in charge don't want it and it'll never happen, I can just say like, oh, sir, would you just like turn around for me and like look Emmeline Pankhurst in the eye and say, there's no point fighting for equal votes. Oh, wait, no. That's a bit of a twee response, but it does sort of really help to sort of ground yourself in the idea that the system can be changed because we've done it before a bunch of times. And laying that out sometimes I find very helpful for instilling a little bit more hope, or at least somewhat combating that disillusionment.
Fantastic. Femi, before I hand over to you, just if anyone's got any other questions, we've probably got about time for about 5 more. So do shove them in the inbox. I've got a question I'm going to answer about systems, much to the annoyance of the team, but I'm going to do it anyway. Femi?
I'm going to build on what Abby said. The point, I'd say that again, looking at the history point, and that at some point people would have thought, oh, that you'll never get a situation where women or black people will have the vote, but it happened. And I think when you look at every single major step of progress that has ever happened in human history, one way I like to look at it is imagine all the people whose lives would have been significantly changed, or whose lives would have not ended when they did, if those changes had happened just 3 years earlier. How many people's lives would have been different if they'd had the vote, had the right to a fair trial, to a lawyer, to decent health care, to marry the woman the woman or the man they love, because those changes didn't happen just 3 years prior. And so if we look at it that way, how many people, if you say, well, it's going to take so long to change the system because it's been like this for ages. No, think of it this way. If you accept the principle that it's not out of the question that a country will just allow forever that the majority of votes won't count. So it's going to happen at some point. And if you look at it that way, it is in how many people's lives will be drastically changed if we bring that date as close as possible to now. So think of it as a sprint. Think of it as you are saving lives the faster you run towards this thing. Because like, for example, it's because a party with 44% of the vote got 56% of the seats that we ended up with a Boris Johnson government during the pandemic that told people to shake hands with COVID patients while the outbreak was happening. That's because the voting system was unfair. And they locked down a week late. If they'd been a week earlier, 30,000 lives would have been saved. And that is a direct result of our unfair voting system giving power to a minority voted party. Again, how many lives would be saved if we brought this date closer?
Absolutely. And like possibly as a reminder to some of us on the call, it was only in 1928 that the Conservative government passed the Representation of People Equal Franchise Act, equalising the franchise to all persons, male and female, over the age of 21. So, you know, we are not talking about that long ago in context. So someone asked about systems. And, you know, since I've started here, everyone's like, we don't want to talk about systems, we just want to talk about change. The truth is, as we get closer to hitting our target of achieving PR, we are going to have to talk about systems because people will only say yes when they know what it means. But what we do, there's a couple of things. We always talk about our good systems agreement, which is the principles that underpin a good proportional system. Things like having a constituency link are vital, like proper representation, they're vital. But, you know, check it out. It's on our website. And also Alberto, who's also on the call today, is brushing up a couple of reports for us. And we're going to go into a bit more detail about what each system actually means and how it works. So that'll give you tools when you're out in the community to talk about what systems really work and also help us with our lobbying to be able to make sure that we are, like, say, we're advocating for the system that is the most proportional and gives people the power. Femi.
Yeah, Alberto told me to mention activism that I've done, and you mentioned the constituency link thing, which reminded me of when I basically doorstepped Jess Phillips about PR, and she gave me a lot of pushback saying, I don't want to be a Labour MP, I want to be the MP for Yardley, I want the constituency link, and I was just like, all right, but the majority of people don't have that constituency link. They don't have an MP that they voted for. They don't have, and even if you do have an MP they voted for, if their party doesn't have a majority in Parliament, then that constituency link is meaningless because their MP can't really do anything for them. And so I said, all right, she's like, what system do you propose? And I was like, well, what if you had a system where in Birmingham, which is where we are, you had, say, 10 MPs split proportionally. So you have that constituency link, but you still have that proportional element so that the number of seats match the number of votes. And she was like, well, you can't just make it up. So yeah, push back against MPs and you'll have some fun.
Perfect. So I've got a question here, which I think lots of us can answer, but it'd be interesting to get you three, your perspective on it. And it's from Charlotte. It's about, she lives in Keir Starmer's constituency. And she says, the problem is he always says it's not a doorstep demand. So yeah, there we are. So how do we make it a doorstep demand? What are your top tips? Because I can see lots of tips are being shared here and people are grabbing them and loving them. So what are your top tips? Go Femi, then Abbie, then Livvy.
Yeah, Jess Phillips tried that one as well. And the point is, and it applies for all the stuff that I talk about, primarily PR and Brexit. Most people, all the issues they care about are directly affected by both of those issues. If you care about the cost of living crisis, then you care about the fact that even though the majority of people want to tax the rich to feed the poor, we keep having governments that don't do that because the majority of votes don't count. And they're not scared enough of the people to actually implement those policies because they think they can get away with not doing those things. So make the point that you are counting on people not understanding that the things they care about are directly affected by the electoral system. You are trying to pull the wool over people's eyes by saying, well, they don't mention that. No, every time they mention the cost of living crisis, they are mentioning PR, whether they mean it explicitly or not. Yeah, sorry.
Abbie.
Yeah, all of that plus I've knocked on many a door, sometimes as MBM, sometimes with a party hat on, and it has come up. Sometimes it has come up literally proportional representation, unprompted by me, as much as I sometimes bring it up in conversations. But you're right, a lot of people, the words proportional representation don't come up as a doorstep demand. But even if people don't have that language, they are telling me it's a doorstep demand every time that they say, oh, I would vote for you, but there's no point voting here because we know how it's going to go. Or I would vote for you, but I need to tactically vote for someone else. And all of that is about the voting system, even if they don't know it. And they're talking about it on the doorstep.
Thank you. Livvy.
Yeah, I'd absolutely echo everything that's already been said. Maybe not starting with PR, not making it the first thing you talk about, but then as soon as they mention something, it's going to be connected. It can be tempting to get into technical kind of systems chat, but that generally does turn people off. But using emotions and examples, so stats and things like the COVID example is huge. If it's Brexit related, if it's anything that they care about. And I think fundamentally it is about power. It's not about specific parties. So we can absolutely reach across the aisle and gather support from anyone and everyone. And ending on hope, like it's been said before, we have won all of these things because of the power of people, not from change coming from above. So it's absolutely doable and it is going to happen. It's just a matter of when.
Livvy, I'm absolutely paraphrasing this. So the person who asked it did not ask it like this. Do you welcome oldies to come to your rally in London?
Absolutely. Yeah. The more people, the better. Anyone and everyone.
Okay, great. Come on then. All of us oldies, we can pitch up. So we've got a couple of other things that I'm just quickly trying to look through. There is a lot here about MP engagement, and I think obviously everyone on this call has had some engagement with MPs. A couple of things for you all to remember. Number one, check out the Fair Vote APPG. If your MP is on there, you don't need to harass them to join it. They've joined it, but maybe send them a note to say, I'm really glad you're on this APPG because fair votes matter to me. If your MP is not on it, the easiest thing you can do is ask them to join the APPG. And when they say no, ask them why. And if they say I haven't got time, you can just say, all you need to do is sign your name up. You don't need to do anything else. And we'll keep on pushing, pushing, pushing. The other thing that someone asked about face-to-face meetings, and I just wanted to not bring the mood down. Face-to-face meetings are really important, but it's much harder for MPs to do that now because of like the difficult and toxic environment that many of them operate in. So you might get turned down for a face-to-face meeting. However, they all have surgeries. So check out when your MP surgery is and book a slot at those surgeries and ask them that you want to talk about voting reform with them. Let me just, let someone, people are doing my job for me. It's amazing answering all these questions. So we've got actually very few minutes left. I'll let people ask, see if there's a last burning question. But, and again, I've just put these two wonderful women on the spot. I'd love it if you could both, all three of you could just give like, your last sort of parting shot about democracy or events, how we can keep the energy that's in this virtual room and build on that momentum and get PR done. So Femi, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'd say that the one thing that pretty much everybody right now shares is that we're not happy with what politicians are doing. And we're not happy about that. And the consequence of that is that we're all suffering. Right now, the UK is experiencing one of the sharpest rises in poverty we've ever experienced. And I think I can remember the look of change, that the look of hope that people get in their eyes when I say, yeah, but the majority of people want something different. People feel so alone that they're the only one that feels they want the system to change, but the majority of people do. Like all the polls show the majority of people want tax switch. All the polls show the majority of people want a fair voting system. People do not trust the system, and things would be so much better for you. Like if you look at there's an account called Proportional Commons, which basically looks at every single vote and says this is how it would have gone in Parliament if all votes had counted equally, and you can see that all the policies just look so much better at every level. So know that when we get to that stage, people's lives in this country will change forever.
Love that. Love that. Livvy.
Yeah, I guess just channeling that energy and carrying it forward into something meaningful. So please, even if you're an oldie, come along um, to London on the 6th. It would just be great to show that we have that public support and backing, because we do, but we need to prove it in person. I think it'll be a great day with lots of speeches, good fun, and hopefully super meaningful.
Just had a quickly at Femi that Nick Battle, Proportional Commons, is on this call. So big thumbs up to Nick. We love the work you do. Thank you. And before I hand over to Abbie, I also just want to give a quick shout out to Barney, who, whilst on this Zoom, has emailed his, I've lost it now, his MP, Helena Dollymore, asking her to join the APPG. So well done, Barney. Come on, Abbie, give us
Yes.
even more
Oh, thank
enthusiasm
you.
and hope.
Great shout out to Nick. As a statistician, as my day job, I am endlessly entertained and informed by the proportional commons charts. But yeah, I guess I just wanted to like a reflection on this, given that a lot of what we've talked about is pulling out this fight as a moment in history and being part of a longer battle. Playing that back also in just MVM's work, I've been a volunteer with this for active volunteer for about 5 years and follower for about 7 years, long before we had quite as many local groups pop up as we do now. When it started, it was mostly maybe like London and Bristol, as I think, where it all kicked off and things like that. And now every time I see on the map that another group has popped up, I'm filled with so much hope, and like seeing all this today and talking about history is really bringing that to mind to me, that this energy is really something different that I've felt in the last couple of years, and that it's it's not going to happen on the 6th of July as everybody's going to go, all right, then we'll have PR, but it feels like a big milestone moment, and I'm very excited to be part of it with all of you.
And I'm really excited too. And thank you particularly to Abbie and Livvy for being dragged into a Q&A we didn't warn you about. But thank you very much. And Femi for your campaigning, advocacy, and your inspiration. And I really can't wait to work even more with all of you. I'd like to sign off by just saying a couple of things, apart from a big thank you to the panelists today, but a thank you to all of you as well, because people talk about people powered movement, but this one really is. This is about you. It's about every street stall you do. It's about every tweet you send. I still call them tweets, by the way. And it's about every MP that you meet. And genuinely, our voice matters. And I'm not going to break an embargo, but tomorrow there's going to be big news. And part of that news is the tide is turning. People want change. People are tired of not being heard. They're tired of their vote not counting. And they're telling people they're tired about it. And we really have a tipping point moment. And I think that when we go to Labour Party conference, to answer someone's question, and talk to MPs, we are going to show them that now is the time for them to be part of history and them to do the right thing and change to a system which enables fair votes, because Britain can be great, but Britain needs a great democracy if it's going to achieve all of its aims and bring people back together. So to the battlegrounds, everyone, and good luck for all your activity on the weekend of the 4th to 6th. And if you need any more information, you know where we are. Email us, drop us a line. We want to do everything we can to support you. So thank you, everyone, and good evening. It's the only sad thing about having everything on mute, because we can't hear everyone cheering at how much. But I know that everyone has had a good time, and so whilst they all leave, thank you so much, you three, for just being inspirational and for jumping in at the last minute, you two ladies, and supporting us. I really appreciate it.
Oh, good. Thanks so much.
Yeah, and Abbie and Livvy, anything that I can use my platform to promote both the events, just say so, including coming to visit and doing videos to promo.
Brilliant. Oh, that would be amazing. Yeah.
Well,
Where did you say you're based in the Midlands?
Yeah, I'm Birmingham. So when you said is anyone up north, it's like relative to London, yes, but no, technically.
You can count. Yeah.
We'll get all the details swapped. Alberto will facilitate that so that we can make that happen. Thank you. Right, I think we might just shut the meeting now, because otherwise, because people have taken a while. But anyway, thank you. Be in touch really soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.